So welcome, Veenu.
I'm so grateful to be here. Thank you so much for having me.
So you have a really interesting story that led you to where you are now. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, so I grew up in Southern California, and my parents had an arranged marriage in India, and then they came to America. And my brother and I were the first generation born here in my family. And my parents ended up getting divorced when I was a baby. And my mom worked several jobs. She put herself through law school. And, so she raised us by herself. And during that time, I grew up in the 70s and 80s. And it was probably around the time I was 6 where I started to feel like I was different because people started, kids started noticing skin color, and that were just different. And that was my first experience of feeling really left out and really feeling like, wow, I'm different. And, you know, life, like kids feed into that, and then as soon as kids get attention for that, then all of a sudden they're like, oh, I know who to go to make myself feel better. And back then we didn't call it bullying. We just called it teasing, kids teased. And when that just stacks every time, and that's my filter of growing up, that I am bullied and I'm left out and I'm not enough and nobody likes me. When your filter is that, that's all you see. You don't see anybody that does like you. You don't see anybody that does care about you. You only see the kids that are making fun of you, the whole class is laughing, or you're left out. Like, and in PE, they're like, okay, we're going to play this game. And you're a captain and you're a captain, pick your teams. And you already know you're going to be the last one picked. And it's just by process of elimination at that point, not because somebody wanted you. And it's interesting though, because as an adult, the more people I talk to, the more like, oh my gosh, I felt that way too. And I'm like, you did? I thought I was the only person in this world that felt that way. Again, it's the filters that we create for ourselves as well. But at that time, you don't know. And, I really just felt not enough. And at 13 was the first time that I really felt like I would just lay in bed and I would cry. And I was just like, okay, God, don't let me wake up tomorrow. Like I just didn't want to wake up. And that was the first time I just was my suicidal thoughts. And that became my reality. That became my prayer every night. I would say 8th grade was my worst year ever. And it just proceeded, and every year got worse. And then you go into high school, and finally at the age of 15, I had a plan to take my life. And it was pretty interesting because I went to my mom's medicine cabinet, and my mom, like if she had like antibiotics, she would just leave it up in her medicine cabinet. So at 15, I just see these brown little bottles with white tops. I don't know what they are. But I'm like, oh, that's my plan. That's what I'm going to take. I'm going to take all these antibiotics or whatever they are. And that was my plan. And I was going to do it. And I had a friend that just happened to call. And, back then we didn't have cell phones. There was no internet. And he was just like, hey, what's going on? And I just, was really sad. And I'm like, thanks for being my friend. I'm out. Like, I don't want to live anymore. I'm tired of this. I had a very emotional thing that happened at high school that day at practice. I felt shunned by my whole team, my whole hockey team. My mom was working late, and he showed up at the right time. And I did not take the pills. I put them back, and I left with him that night just to go and talk. And then when I got back, my mom was like, where were you? And, because I was grounded, and I was just like, it's called suicide. And I don't think my mom even knew the depth of what I was feeling. And I think there's it's misconstrued about why people are suicidal. I never felt not loved. Like I knew at every fiber of my body, my mom loved me. Like I knew I was loved. And I had my best friend Tiffany since the time I was 6. Like I knew, like she's been my like ride or die friend, right? Like I knew. So it wasn't about not feeling loved, and it was not about feeling alone. It was about not feeling enough. And no matter what I did, I just could not feel like I was good enough for this world. Like, and when your mom is working and going to law school and then becoming a lawyer, like you don't want to burden anybody, right? Like you just keep it to yourself. And the times that I would spend like on the weekends is like when I really got time with my mom. And some of my best moments were honestly like laying in bed with her watching soap operas. And that's like how we connected. And to this day, I still watch General Hospital. And I don't know, like, if it's just, sometimes it's a comfort thing. Like when I'm really stressed and I watch that, like, you know, it goes back to those old memories of what I created with my mom. And I just, after I told my mom I was suicidal, she, you know, did what she knew. Like she called friends, she got me to see a psychologist. Next thing you know, I was in a psych hospital. I was there for 30 days, and that's where I actually learned how to cut, you know, self-harm, because there was other people doing it. And at first I thought it was really weird because I'm like, oh, where do they put me? I was scared. I'm like, that's not me. And then I realized, I'm like, wow, like that is such a coping mechanism to just take care of that pain that I felt so deep inside that I didn't even understand. Like when people say your heart aches, like my heart literally ached. And so I became cutting, you know, I was a cutter. And that's what I wrote my book about, was that journey. And I did not have a high tolerance for pain. So I didn't cut for very long. I realized that even though I cut and like to watch like the pain just, you know, be there instead of inside, it was external versus internal. After, it was like the pain was still there, you know, and I didn't know how to deal with it. And so I stopped cutting. I started to just do some breathing. I started to avoid. I started to focus more on just taking my life, because that was my answer. You know, that was the answer to not feeling this pain anymore. During that time, fast forward, my mom ended up sending me to India to a boarding school, because she reached out to her parents going, I don't know what to do with Veenu. You know, like my brother was a drug addict and my mom was so afraid I was going to take that path. What she didn't know is that watching my brother take that path scared me so much. So I knew that wasn't going to be my path. And again, as a single mom, you don't know, right? You do the best you can with what you got. So my grandparents were like, okay, well, we know a boarding school that have Americans there, so she'll feel comfortable, and let's just take her there. Let's get her disciplined. Let's take her to another country, because, you know, maybe she's just spoiled. Maybe she just has too much here, which was ironic because we didn't grow up with a lot of money. I didn't grow up with anything. Every time I wanted to do something, we couldn't afford it. And yet, compared to India, we had a lot. We had so much. And so I went to boarding school there for a couple years and then came back. And the first guy that said he loved me, he was a Marine. I like, oh, I love you too. And we got married. I was 18, had my first child at 20. And again, like anytime I felt depressed, I wanted to take my life. My relationship with my first husband, it just was volatile. Like he would drink and he would like push me. And so I thought that's all I was good enough for, was that kind of relationship. And I remember being in a car and I was pregnant with my first son, and we had moved to North Carolina because he got stationed there. And I was looking for trees just to crash my car into, because I felt like if I just killed me and the baby, that he would not be left to be raised by his father, who was hurting me. And just something inside of me says, no, you know, you're going to make it. You're going to make it. And, you know, I'll tell you, Jennifer, it's in those moments of decision that your whole life is created. You know, my child that I was carrying saved my life. And fast forward, 4.5 years later, I have another child. And then I end up getting divorced after 11, 12 years of marriage to this man. And I was a single mom now. And I decided that my youngest child would graduate in 2016. So that would be the year. Like, that's it. Like, I've raised my boys. They're both adults. Now I can finally get out of this life. Like, how do I just get out? You know, it's that fight or flight. Like, I'm done fighting. I'm out. And in 2007, I feel like there's no coincidence. I think everything's fate. I happened to meet this girl, Sarah, through her mom. And she's like, you know, it would make my year if you would just go to this seminar. And I'm not here to promote Tony Robbins, but I will tell you that it was that seminar that I made the decision that suicide was a non-negotiable. It was in that moment, again, of decision that suicide was a non-negotiable. And the hardest thing I had to do after that is, now that I chose to live, what was life going to be like now? Like, honestly, that was the most scariest thing, because now I had to be accountable. So I went from 13 to 34 as suicide was that was it. Like, suicide was it. I was going to take myself out of this life. That was the answer. I didn't have to be accountable for anything. And now I decided to live. And that was my pivot. And if I was going to live, I realized that I was the only person in this world that was going to create the life that I wanted. And where I lived, I did not have any coaches out there. I didn't have anybody that believed in all the stuff that I was going to do. Everybody where I lived is a military town. Everybody works for a paycheck. And when you work for a paycheck, you spend your paycheck on your bills, and then you wait till the next paycheck. And that is what I learned. And now all of a sudden I was going to defy all the odds, and I was going to create who I am today. So in order to do that, there was one thing I had to do. I had to learn how to love myself. I had to learn to figure out, why was I enough? Instead of always looking at I wasn't enough, I had to reframe the question is, what has to happen to make me feel I'm enough? What has to happen to make me know that I'm loved and I feel love? What has to happen for me to fall in love with me? That was my first step. So then I realized, what's the gift? What is the gift of everything I've encountered in my life? And when I am here to tell all your people out there that's listening is, when you want to pivot, when you want to make that one change, when life is not going the way you want, ask yourself, what's the gift? Because in that moment of asking myself, what's the gift? I realized I was still alive. I was still breathing. I had 2 beautiful children that loved me unconditionally. I had the support of my mom. Like, I had so much love around me. And if they can love me, there was obviously something in me to love. So what's the gift? The gift is that I survived all that bullying. So now I can go and teach people what that's like, because I lived it. I have the opportunity to teach people about suicide because I'm not somebody looking on the outside just studying about it. I'm somebody who lived it for 21 years. I have a gift of connecting with people and making people feel safe, because I know what that really means to actually feel safe. Not just say, oh, I'm safe, but to really feel safe, that I can open up and share and know that what I'm sharing is okay and not be judged. It's at that moment I started to create who I am today. And then I looked at it, like, where is our world today? What is happening? School shootings, suicide, bullying. Like, every time you turn around, there's something. So a few years ago, I created a movement called the Bully Proof Life Movement. And I have a Facebook page called the Bully Proof Life Movement. And I was going to go get into schools, and I was talking to students, and I was teaching students about bullying and why kids actually bully and why the victims stay the victims. And then from there, I'm like, okay, how can I make a bigger effect? I kind of loved what you said, Jennifer. You was like, I'm not doing that ripple effect stuff. I'm making a tsunami. And I love that, because that's how I felt. I'm like, okay, right now I'm just putting ripples in the water. How do I go bigger? Right? It's like, one of my mentors always says there's always another level. So, okay, so what's the next level, right? Like, what is the next level? The next level for me was to get to the cause. What's the cause? What's really going on? Why do kids feel they're not enough? Why did I feel like I was not enough? And, it comes back to the way we're talked to, the language. What are we seeing? What are we hearing? So, and I'll just use my kids as an example. So when my son would bring home a C, I'd be like, a C? Really? Because in my mind, as a parent, They had to reach the standard. They had to be the top. And I know they could do it. So I had this idea that encouragement was to tell them that you can do better. What is a C? Why do you have a C? You're not studying. You're not this. You're not that. And I go back and I listen to the language. You're not. You're not. Why are you not? Why are you not? Instead of saying, wow, you got a C. How does that make you feel? And if my child, which one of them I know would have been like, oh, I'm good with that C, then why can't I as a mom be good with that C? And if I felt there was another level for him, what is the opportunity there to teach him about another level? What if, as a parent, I could have influenced him to get a B or an A so he could experience that feeling, so he would want it more? Like, instead of motivating our kids, we have to pull our kids. What's the pull? When you ask a kid, well, what would it feel like to have an A, and they've never had an A? They don't know. They have no clue. So I was lucky enough to have a do-over because I have a 26-year-old, 21-year-old, and I have 7-year-old twins. So my twins are my do-over. And I remember not too long ago, one of my twins came to me and he had a 10% on a little quiz. And I said, well, Sam, you get to take this over. And he's like, okay. And I said, so what can mommy do to support you? What can mommy do to help you study for it? He's like, I don't need to study for it. And I said, well, do you like that 10%? And he's like, yeah. Now, mind you, he's 7. So like percentages and stuff don't really add up to him yet. So I had to get creative. And I said, okay. So I allowed him not to study for it. And on Friday, he came home and he's like, Mom, I told you I didn't need to study. I said, you took the quiz? He says, yeah. I said, well, show it to me. And he's like, look, I got a 30%. And for him, 30 is greater than 10. So he was so excited. And guess what? We celebrated that 30%. And then what I do know is that my son is learning money. So I said, Sam, would you rather have a quarter and a nickel, which is 30 cents, or would you like to have this dollar? He's like, the dollar? And I said, I said, so if this test is 30 cents, what would have to happen to make it a dollar? He's like, well, I have to study. And I said, and how could we study? And he's like, well, you can tell me the words and I can tell you what they mean. I said, that would be a great way. He's like, well, next week I have another quiz. I said, well, let's do that for next week. And this is what I'm talking about. I got the same results without making him feel bad. That was a win for him. And when people ask themselves, what creates happiness? It's not money. It's not love. It's not encouragement. It is progress. When you make progress in any area of your life, you will create that happiness in your life. And that's what I'm doing now. I've turned my pain into, being a victim, into surviving, and now I'm thriving. And honestly, that's what I go and talk about now. I have been through abusive relationships because I didn't feel good enough. Not feeling good enough about yourself will have a trickle effect into your life. You will not pick the right partner. You will beat yourself up all the time. And all of us have learned to be self-beaters, instead of, self-loving and self-caring. If you can't lift yourself up, why are you lifting everybody else up?
Yeah.
It has to start with you. It has to start with you.
Crazy. That's I love your story and I love how you're helping people now. So I'm going to take you back just a little bit. When you're moving out of that, from that suicidal to this empower, I'm sure there's, little nuggets that you took out of there, like little action steps. It wasn't just like, oh, this is how it is now. What were some of those first things that you did to get yourself out of that funk, so now that you're helping parents and children so that they can kind of move through this faster?
So you're right. It was like, I'm not suicidal. Let me go save the world. Yeah. So when I decided I wasn't suicidal, again, I told you that was the hardest decision of my life.
Yeah.
And now I had to ask myself, so what has to happen now? So the first thing is ask yourself, what do I want my life to look like? So I created a little, a form, I guess you would say, right? And it's called Real, rewrite your life, write your life out the way it is and then rewrite it. If you had a magic wand to change your life, what would it look like? Would you be married? Would you be single? Would you have kids? Would you not? Would you, have a career? Would you be an entrepreneur? Would you be a painter? You write everything out. And then you look at what is your reality. I mean, if you don't want kids and you got kids, I'm sorry. Your reality is you have kids. So how are you going to make it into that beautiful picture that you just painted, right? So, but you first got to figure out, what do I really want? And then you have to start to see, you have to evolve into that. So how do you evolve into that new story? You create an action plan. You have to close the gap. You have to evaluate. You have to calibrate. Where am I at now? And how do I get to that? So what has to happen to close that gap? So now you start writing out strategies, right? So you chunk little things, like in work area, I want this, this, and this. For myself, I want this, this, and this. And for relationships, I want this, this, and this. And then you start to take action. So A is your action. So you have rewrite is your R, evolve is your strategies, is your E, A is your action. So you're going to take action steps. Nothing happens unless you take action. And then once you take action, your L is your live. Now you're living that life. You've created that beautiful picture. You are living it now. And that's exactly what I did. So for me personally, I stopped going to the bars. Like, I used to go to the bars during the weekdays, and it wasn't that I was a big drinker. I mean, I would have a drink here and there, but it was for the socialization, right? It was to get connection, which, funny enough, you and I were just talking about, like, everybody wants connection. And so, I would go to the bars to get connection. So I stopped doing that. I created a peer group that was going to pull me, right, to create that pull into the next level of my life. So I did not hang around people that were doing the same thing I was doing. I was starting to create a peer group. So I would do masterminds. I would find like groups on Facebook, like there's a lot of people that are in the Tony Robbins environment. So they're like-minded people. They're always looking for the next level. So I started doing groups with them. I started volunteering a lot for Tony Robbins, and, eventually got into his leadership group. And now, now I'm a trainer for Robbins Research International. So, again, how did I do that? I created that peer group to pull me, to take me to the next level. You don't have to do it by yourself. Stop it. Stop thinking you have to do this by yourself. If you want something different, do something different. And that's exactly what I did.
And that, I want to make that like a big point, is like, don't do this alone. Like, it is kind of possible to get where you want to go, but not really unless you have that support, because we are meant for connection.
Absolutely. And you know what's interesting that I'm finding out now, Jennifer, because I was telling you, I've been doing a lot of coaching and calls right now, really trying to help our community, because this is the time we need connection. And two things have come up for me. I have realized people don't want to ask for help. And then when they do ask for help, they don't want to receive it. We are so stuck in our mind that we have to have money. We have to have money. We have to have money. And I'm sitting here telling people, I'm like, look, I will give you so much coaching for free. Like, don't worry about this right now. Give me the gift of helping you. That's it. And let's just get through this time, and then we can reevaluate where we're at on the other side of it. But right now you need this, and it's so funny how many people will, message me or Facebook message me or Instagram message me, and I'm responding, and then it's crickets. And honestly, in this time, I don't have time to go chase people.
Yeah.
If you reach out, I respond. If you need something back, like you'll come and get it. And one person wrote me back and they're like, you know what, I appreciate it. I just because I just start feeding them like tidbits. Like if there's like a Zoom call or like your podcast, like if I know your podcast is going to help somebody, I will copy and paste that. Be like, you need to listen to this. This is where you're at in your life. You need to listen to that. Oh my gosh, Veenu, thank you. Like, I'm so sorry. I've ignored you. I just really thought that you were just one of those people that say you were help, but you really didn't want to. I'm like, really? Because that's where our mindset is right now. What the world needs right now is a shift in mindset. we have to find the gift in this. Like you and I were talking right before, like what a gift that they're giving us connection. And, for me, I haven't really felt the crisis per se. For me, we came to my mom in Idaho and we planned to go back 2 days ago. We're not going back. Like, what an opportunity that I get to spend more time with my mom and my stepdad. What a great opportunity. My 89-year-old grandma is here, that, we're trying to kind of stay away because she's older and, her immune system and stuff, but to know that I'm here with her, not on the other side of the country. Like, to me, that's a gift. If this virus didn't happen, I would have been back home. Actually, I'd be planning on going to Australia for, to go support another event. So, it's more time with my kids. My kids were just diagnosed with dyslexia and ADHD. I get an opportunity to figure out how can they learn in a different way? How can I support them now? To just take a pause and really just focus on them. Not to say, okay, well, they're going to be at school, so I can do me. So now as of Monday, because we're on intercession break, they go year round. So, but on Monday, we're doing Zoom class. Like class is back in for us. And so now I got to rearrange my schedule and I get to be one of those parents that, you know what, I'm going to juggle it too,
So how in that time are you going to make sure that you have what you need too?
So what's great is about 8:00, I tell, the kids, I'm like, this is my time, 8:00 at night, you're going to get your bath, you need to go downstairs, you can watch some shows and then it's bed, I will come and do my snuggle time, but this is my time. And, I am in a couple challenges with people. So I do my Egoscue exercises. It's where I kind of get caught up and I'm doing this prosperity game, that a friend created. So I go online and I do that. And that's my time for me. I'll watch my General Hospital. I will, watch a show, and it's just my time to I don't have to think. Like, my brain gets to go on pause. And, we all fill up different ways. And I have a morning routine. My morning routine is I just do my gratitude every morning, before I get out of bed. And that's like my 15 minutes for just me. So, I definitely have my own rituals for myself, because if I am not putting my own oxygen mask on first, then I'm going to get depleted, and nobody will get the best of me.
Yeah. Well, you just mentioned, because it's starting Monday for you, a lot of parents that I'm talking to, this is one of the reasons why I was super excited today to have this. I'm going to air this really soon, is that I don't know the mom thing. I'm not a mom. So how do you keep yourself? I mean, for me, just having my husband that comes and goes because he's fire, sometimes it's hard for me to put my oxygen mask on first on the days that he's home because it's limited, but I still need me time.
So let me give you some tips I just gave one of my clients. Set your phone for an hour alarm. And when that alarm goes off, take a moment, take just 2 minutes to just breathe, right? So box breathing, where you inhale for 4 seconds, and then you hold it for 4 seconds, exhale for 4 seconds, and then hold for 4 seconds. Just do that for 2 minutes. I just learned this from a breathing expert called, his name is Dan Burrell. He was one of our speakers at one of the events I was at, and I taught it to my daughter. And it's funny because when I start, getting like, okay, we got to do this, she's like, Mom, maybe you just need to box breathe. And I'm like, you know what? What a great idea. And she goes, let's box breathe together. I'm like, let's just do this together. So how great, not just for you, but to teach your children that, because it really just calms you. You focus just on breath. We go back to the one thing that we forget is our breath, right? And our breath definitely can raise our heartbeat or bring it down, right? So box breathing is just really about getting calm and centered. And then just take a minute to name like 3 things you're grateful for. Like, what are your gifts right now in that moment? And that is a huge tip that I told my client. She's like, oh my God, that's so amazing. As we schedule people, like I've scheduled this podcast, right after this podcast, I have a coaching client, schedule time for you. Like, you are just as important. You are just as important as that client, as that podcast, as that call, as your child. If anything, you're more important at this moment. So schedule time, block out time for you, right? If it's 20 minutes, if it's a half hour, if it's an hour, what's your block? Like for me, my block is like 8 o'clock until I decide that, okay, I need to go get some sleep. Know your sleep cycle. I need 7 hours. I'm not good at 6 hours, and I'm not good at, I can go to about 8, but after 8 hours, I am not good. Know your sleep cycle. Google that. Google sleep cycle. I forget his name, but he was another speaker that's an expert on sleep. Once I realized my pattern that I need 7 hours to be the best me, I literally have on my my iPhone my sleep time, and alarm goes off. It's like, this is your sleep time. And so I'm like, oh, okay, turn off the TV and go to bed. A lot of people are having a hard time sleeping right now. So a tip I want to share with that is, again, it goes back to breath. Do a lot of box breathing. Another thing is there's so many meditations right now. For me, my mind does not like to stop. It goes and goes and goes. So I need guided meditation. I need to hear, see yourself doing this, like see yourself walking on the beach. There's nobody there. You hear the water. What is the water saying to you? What is it? What's the sound? What are you feeling? And it goes through all your senses. So I'm like picturing, because I'm a very visual kinesthetic person. So girl, by the end of that meditation, I'm already out. Like, I don't even know. Like, I am out. So, it's really just refocusing your brain. We just need to stop our brain, The second thing, or the third or fourth, whatever tip this is stop beating yourself up. You are doing great. Someone just said today, you're the teacher. You have a new identity. What is that identity going to look like? If you're the new homeschool teacher, instead of claiming that you're not, guess what? You are. You are for now. Create that identity. So as a homeschool teacher, what do you need to focus on? How are you standing? How are you breathing? Like, just just check in with your physiology, and, if I'm a homeschool teacher, I'm definitely not going to feel rushed. I'm going to be taking some deep breaths. I'm going to stand confident that I could teach my children, whether I'm going to fake it to make it, but I'm going to be confident that I can teach them, especially this Common Core stuff that I have no clue about, because that's not how I learned how to do math. And then I'm going to focus. I'm going to focus on being the best that I can be for them. I'm not going to focus on getting it right. I'm not going to focus on being the best teacher. I'm not going to focus on what if I don't teach them. I'm going to focus on, what can I do to support my kid right now? What can I do? And then the language, what are you telling yourself? You know what I'm telling myself? I'm telling myself that I am the best homeschool teacher that I could possibly be at this moment. I'm not comparing myself to people, because I'm just telling myself, I'm like, Veenu, you got this. Veenu, you have the resources. Veenu, if you don't know it, you're going to learn it. So I really just create a whole new identity of what that looks like. And it's interesting because I have so much patience with the kids that I work with, because, I coach kids, I coach families, and I coach individuals, adults, and I always have patience for them. And then sometimes as a mom, I don't have so much patience. So I know there's moms out there that are like, oh my God, I feel her. So what I do is I create that teacher mama. Like, that's my other identity, my teacher mama. So I'm a teacher, right? I'm a coach, like working with a client, but I'm also the mama. So that has its own identity of patience, asking more questions, asking my kid, because like one of them will get really frustrated. I'm like, I know you're frustrated right now. What do you need right now? And they'll be like, I don't know. And they're crying. I'm like, do you need a break? Do you need to get some water? Do we need to read this over again? Do I need to read it to you? Do you need your nanny or your dad to teach you this? Like, is mommy not getting, ask your kids, what do they need?
Yeah.
I promise you, YouTube has videos about everything. So if you can't teach them, go to YouTube and, put in the search how to do adding Common Core 2-digit math for second grade. Let your kid watch the video. Like, take a break. You know, this is the time of uncertainty. Parents, we are living in an uncertain time. We have to create uncertainty to creativity. Get creative. One of my greatest friends just taught me that the other day, and I'm telling you, Jennifer, that is what I'm hanging on to right now, is in uncertain times, how can I get creative? You know, take a breath. Let them watch a video on it. You know, maybe Zoom with another mom in that class and say, hey, let's do this. You want to tag team on this? How about you teach the Common Core math and I'll teach the reading? You know, there's so many things that we can do. But I'm going to tell you, I want to just say this real quick too, if I might. The biggest thing right now is our kids need connection. Okay. They need social connection. Not one of our kids say, oh, I'm going to go to school to do math today. When you ask your kid, what was great about your day? They're going to say, recess, hanging out with my friends, going to lunch with my friend, you know, whatever age there are. It's all about being with their friend. You know, if your kids are in high school, seeing my boyfriend, you know, whatever. So we have great platforms like this. We have Zoom, Skype, FaceTime, WhatsApp has FaceTime, Facebook has FaceTime. You know, there's so many apps right now. Give your kid time to just connect. You know, like Zoom, like if there's like 5 girls your teenage girls hang out with, get them on a Zoom, you know, tell them like, hey, today we're going to bake cookies, put a Zoom on, everybody get their cookie stuff out and make cookies together. You know, maybe you're all going to watch the same movie. Okay, 1, 2, 3, push play. And you guys get to watch it and make comments together, just like you would if you guys were together. Help your kids get creative to still have that connection. You know, because when I hang out with my friends, I'm not constantly touching them or whatever. It's just face to face. It's the energy. It's the laughing. You know, it's the camaraderie of it. So we can still create that through these FaceTime things. It's funny because when I was little, we used to watch the Jetsons, and you know, all they had was TV, telephone, right? And as a kid, I'm like, that is so weird. Can you imagine talking to somebody on a video and seeing them? That's so crazy. You know, the Jetsons had something.
There's a lot of cartoons that are like, whoa, it's actually reality now. I'm like, this is so cool.
Because people got creative.
Yeah.
You know, I love what Tony Robbins says about this is our winter. I am a gladiator. I will not be denied. You know, again, it's just an identity. You know, and when all this happened, and I was sitting at my mom's a couple weeks ago, and the event that I was supposed to be at got canceled, I was like, oh, I get another week with my mom. I'm like, you know what? This is going to be my winter. You know, this is going to be my winter, and I'm a gladiator. I'm going to survive this. I'm going to do whatever I can to make me better in this moment and make all the people around me better. You know, my word for this, I have my little word bracelet, and it says inspire. And, you know, when I chose this word, I didn't know that this is what the world's going to need right now. They're going to need people to really inspire them.
Speaking of inspiring them, how can they get into your space? Because you said that you're supporting a lot of people in your group right now and in your community.
So I'm on pretty much, I mean, unless there's new platforms out there, but I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, and everything's under Veenu Inspires. And that's Veenu Inspires. And my website is veenuinspires.com. So I've made it pretty simple to get up with me. If you want, if you're dealing with a child that's being bullied, or you're dealing with a child that is doing self-harm, I have 2 books on Amazon. It's Bullyproof Life Movement, Volume 1. My friend, I was just a co-author in that, but my friend has created like 5 volumes of it. And then Numb is the one on self-harm, where me and 5 other people shared our story. So there's going to be a story that you or your child can connect with to really get strategies on how to stop self-harming.
Yeah. And I think that, you know, even though we're all connected now, I think that it's still going to be important because there's going to be new ways to bully, I'm sure, coming out of all of this. Although I like to look at the light side, I'm sure that there is that other side of the coin all the time.
Right. And the other thing I want to say, that like domestic violence is really getting to be an issue right now. Like I have friends in Australia, the UK that have reached out. And I have, I was a victim of domestic violence. I have been a survivor of domestic violence, and now I'm a thriver of it. And so the one thing is that, people are like, can you share tips? Can you share tips? And I'm going to be honest with you, Jennifer, like the first tip I have to share is know that you're enough and get out. You will never leave that cycle unless you just make the conscious choice to get out. You got it. And that's the first step, right?
Yeah.
Just the first step for me was to say, I'm not suicidal. That was the first step. And I'm going to tell you, since the moment I decided to love me and know that I'm enough, I have never been in a domestic violence situation again. Like, matter of fact, the man that I'm married to now is someone that just adores me, and he loves me and he supports me. And, we have our differences, but what's beautiful about our differences is that we grow from it. We never say we have a bad moment in our relationship. We always say we either have growth or we have greatness.
I love that. That's beautiful. You've really created such a beautiful thing, and the fact that you're sharing and helping others create that space too is just, I don't know, it makes my heart happy.
Well, I'm going to be putting together a Zoom just webinar where parents can just come on and just be real and raw, get some answers next week. I got to look at my kids' schedule for school, and then I'm going to create this webinar just to put it out there for free group coaching to just really help the mama and daddies out there that just need that support right now, where they can get on and ask questions. So no selling. I'm not selling anything. I'm just here to support right now.
And I will put that in all over my social apps if you want to send that over to me. And I'll put it in the show notes too, of how to get into any of those spaces, because that is really important right now. So,
yeah. I mean, I think it's a shame because there's a lot of groups out there, and as soon as you post something, they're like, oh, this is against the rules, no self-promoting. This is not a time about self-promoting. This is a time to say, I'm sorry, I just happen to be the host, but I mean, if this is going to help people for free, and it's sad because these are the platforms where people are reaching out and wanting the support, so it's just trying to help. We just need to get into the like-mindedness of just helping now. What can we do to support each other?
Yeah. And I think that support that you're offering is amazing. And I think this is a perfect timing. Like, all these podcast interviews have been like divine timing. I know this isn't coming from me at this point. It's coming from somewhere else, because it just is like all perfect timing for every single guest I've had. It's been exactly what's been needed at that time. So
right.
I'm really excited that I got the chance to talk to you.
Well, thank you so much. Thank you for caring enough about our world to, right now we need podcasts. We need to get it out there. I mean, everything is, online, social media, and, if we can't be on the front line helping these people, we'll be, the ones supporting,
Yeah, for sure. Well, thank you again, and I look forward to continuing our connection, because
yes,
I love your message so much. I'm just like so happy.
Oh, thank you so much.